I would say I'm a Stanley knife, a gospel Stanley knife, so I do a lot of different things. Maybe not as well as someone who is a full-time preacher is doing that all week. So basically I would say I'm a generalist in church planting. But one of the things I want to be in our church is, when you have a Stanley knife, you don't go and use the tiny wee scissors to cut up a cardboard box. You go for scissors. So one of the things I see myself doing is training up people who disciple better than me, training up people who preach better than me, training up people who do evangelism better than me. And I think that's a healthy gospel church, to equip the saints. I grew up in the Highlands of Scotland during probably the biggest decline in Christianity that Scotland's ever seen. So 40 years ago, 98% of the population would say they were Christian in some form. Now it's down to 2%, and that happened in my lifetime. Mainly guys who are tertiary educated, like university, will gravitate to cities or kind of upper class communities just by nature and design of culture, context. And the underclass and the poor community was being totally missed in Christian ministry. And there's good statistics to prove that 95% of Scottish churches aren't in a scheme which is a deprived area, but yet 47% of the population live in a poor area. So the church doesn't reflect its culture anymore. In some sense, it's gravitated out of it into a kind of bubble. 8 years ago, I landed with my boots on the ground. The church started meeting 3 years ago. Because COVID happened in between that, and we had a hard lockdown for 18 months, so basically we weren't allowed to leave the house, which made ministry really tricky. It's intimate and it was tough. It was a hard time, and there was a couple of times thinking, is this going to work because of COVID? It's like we're eating into money that the little that we could have raised beforehand. But the Lord was faithful in all of that. And people did come out of that with questions that actually opened doors to have good conversations about your soul, about Christ, about eternity. So people need to know you're for them. You're there, you're going to be consistently here. So we ask every member of our church to move into the community, to live side by side with people. It's a big ask because Thatcher, many years ago in Britain, taught that to live in a community like mine, you should have aspiration to escape it, to become middle class. And a lot of Christians have imbibed that kind of worldview, that coming to an area like mine's like failure. You're going back to where your parents came from, which is a horrible thing to think of because there's souls here. This is not failure, this is home for many people. One of the challenges with churches is we confess to have community, but it's actually weaker than the drug community. They actually care for one another in a broken way. And if the church isn't equally as robust, they'll always kind of drift back to that community that loves them well. So we need to be very intentional how we love one another. And key of that again is trust, transparency and openness. We are open with our woundedness and our brokenness and sin. So that's one of the reasons I struggle with the AA groups in Scotland, because no one ever progresses out of them. I think the greatest AA group is a Sunday meeting in a church. So one of the things, again, we train our people to do is understand these things, but also challenge them to live it out. Can we do that? So can we have people in our houses, even if they're a mess? Can we live side by side with people? I think the biggest challenge with long-term members is if they have been hurt or burnt in the past, helping them not be jaded by that, but step out again with someone new and just be bold for the gospel. You know what I mean? Paul prays that constantly. Let me be bold with the gospel. So we experiment a lot with people where they can serve in the church, what they can do. But everyone, the minute they're converted and become a member in our church, they're on a one-to-one discipleship with an older Christian. So they're getting that culture as well. And the minute someone else comes to faith, we ask one of the new believers if they would disciple them. One of the things I'm really keen on is training and equipping ministry teams. This is something that actually I've taken from the States and my experience of the way you guys do things in Scotland, especially in the Highlands of Scotland. It would be very much a one-man ministry model. We pay the minister to do evangelism, hospitality, outreach, and preach to us. That is changing. So in our church, we have a gospel worker called Mary Murchison, who's gold, who moved into the community to kind of do ministry to the teens, women, just anyone she's around really. But kind of diversifying out, or kind of, best way, like I said earlier on, is putting more strands on the net of what we're casting out each week. So Titus 2, one up, one down, basically is kind of what we model. Again, to share culture, to share that. You may be discipling someone who was addicted to alcohol. They come to faith and all the burdens and battles that comes to, and then they're discipling the guy who's coming off heroin. And there's actually a connection that they can share in that battle. Because we need to understand as Christians, I think, that your battlefield is different to mine in your spiritual life. You may have different weaknesses to me. That's the same with the guy with mental health. It's the same guy with an addiction. Their battlefield, we're all trying to kill sin and pursue Christ, but there's different landmines that they may face to me and you. And that's why we need the church, because when they stand on one, like we're doing communion this Sunday, the smell of alcohol might be a landmine, makes one of them struggle. It's nothing, that's nothing to me. But I can go and speak to them and ask how you doing, is that a challenge, can I be praying for you? Discipling one another and living it out. So I think one of the keys to that, again, not to bang this drum, is transparency and vulnerability. If we are open with our failings and faults, it gives other people around us psychological permission to do the same.